Hello, everybody. This is Bill Cohen, your hometown Columbus boy. I was raised right here in Columbus. I've been here my whole life, my entire 72 and a half years. And I'm here with a concert for you, a concert of songs that I call Songs of Heart and History. Because I love virtually every genre of music, but I especially love songs that are more than just songs. I like songs that either reflect some part of American history or they reflect some positive American value. And the songs I've selected to do today with you are in those two categories. So songs with heart and history. So we're going to start with the 1930s. Some of you, I think, may be old enough to remember the Depression, and that's what this first song is all about. I'm sure when I talk to people who've been through the Depression, one thing they tell me is that they learned one big lesson, and that is that even though money and jobs were very important, something was even more important, and that was family and friends. Because they tell me during those hard times, you could get by even with not much money and not a job if you had family and friends right by your side. Sing along if you know this. Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. Maybe we're ragged and funny, but we're traveling alone, singing our songs side by side. Oh, we don't know what's coming tomorrow. Maybe it's trouble and sorrow, but we'll travel our road, sharing our load side by side. Through all kinds of weather, what if the sky should fall? But as long as we're together, it really doesn't matter at all. When they've all had their troubles and parted, we'll be the same as we started, just traveling along, singing our songs side by side, side by side, side by side. Side by side, those Depression years, the 1930s. Well, by the late 1930s, things had started to ease up just a little bit, but the Depression was still with us. And one thing people did a lot during those Depression years, if they could scrape up a nickel, they might try to escape all those sad and bad thoughts about the Depression by going to the movie theater. And there was one movie that came out around 1938 that really struck people, really resonated with them. The Wizard of Oz. You might remember it began in black and white. Of course, black and white was the main way we saw movies back then. But midway through the movie, all of a sudden, the movie screen turned into colors. And it was amazing. And it was perfect because it reflected the theme. When Dorothy and her friends went to the land of Oz, that imaginary land, wow, it made sense that it went from black and white to color. Judy Garland, you'll remember, was the big star of the movie. She was just a teenager then. But playing Dorothy, she captured our hearts and our minds with her beautiful acting and her beautiful singing. And this is the song that really made the movie. We still sing it these days. Sing along. I know you know it. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble smells like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh why can't I? Over the Rainbow, The Wizard of Oz. It was right around this time, 1938-39, that another song burst onto the scene. And it was from a songwriter who had been around for decades. Irving Berlin was his name. And he actually had written a song 20 years before this. 1918 was the year. And he wrote a song, patriotic song. He really liked it, but he said, you know, the World War, that's what they called the First World War back then, because we didn't know whether there'd be a second one. He said to himself, the World War is ending here in 1918. We don't really need a patriotic song. We're coming into peacetime now. So he took that sheet music of his new song and he put it up on a shelf. And it sat there for 20 years. 20 years. But in 1938 and 39, Irving Berlin looked overseas to Europe. He saw the Nazis taking over country after country. And he said to himself, you know, one of these days America, the United States of America, may have to get into this war against the Nazis, and we need patriotism. So he took that sheet music off the shelf, and he said, I need somebody to sing this song with a full voice. And he found the person to sing it, a woman with a big voice, Kate Smith. I know you know this song. Sing along with me. God bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairie, to the ocean white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America. I know a lot of folks in your generation, we call you the greatest generation because you got us through the Depression and World War II. Some members of your generation, when they hear God bless America, they are so moved that they stand up and put their hands over their hearts or they salute, almost as if God bless America was the national anthem. That's how much people feel when they hear that song. Well, 1940 was now the year. World War II was ablaze in Europe and in the Far East. But the U.S. was not in the war yet. Remember, we wouldn't get into the war until Pearl Harbor, December of 1941. But the British, they were very aware of the war. They were right in the middle of it. London was being bombed by the Nazi warplanes flying overhead, dropping bombs, not just on military installations, but on people's houses and apartment buildings. And the air raid sirens would roar, and the people would run down into their basements to try to seek shelter. And those were dark days for the Brits. It looked like the Nazis might actually take over Great Britain. But with Winston Churchill and others rallying the forces, they rallied to the cause. And one thing that helped them was a song that two American men actually wrote for the Brits. They said, you know, we've got God Bless America. The Brits need a song to inspire them. And so they wrote this beautiful song, and they set this song in one of the most beautiful places in all of Europe, the White Cliffs of Dover. So let me put my guitar here, and let me move over to the piano, and let's do this song, The White Cliffs of Dover. I'll never forget the people I met, braving those angry skies. I remember well as the shadows fell, the light of hope in their eyes. And though I'm far away, I still can hear them say, bombs up. But when the dawn comes up, there'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. There'll be love, there'll be laughter, and peace ever after. Tomorrow, when the world is free. The shepherd will tend his sheep, the valley will bloom again, and Jimmy will go to sleep in his own little room again. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. There'll be love, there'll be laughter, and peace ever after. Tomorrow, when the world is free. The White Cliffs of Dover. What a beautiful, inspiring song. There's another wartime song that comes out of World War II that really resonated with people a lot because so many thousands of American young men and even some women were over in Europe fighting against fascism and Nazism, and some were also in the Far East. And their loved ones back home, back here in the USA, missed them so very much that a song Bing Crosby had recorded just a few years before really caught on because it took on a whole new meaning. And it really struck a chord with people who were missing their loved ones overseas. And of course, you can still sing this song today when you're missing someone who's loved you, someone you have loved. I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you. Well, finally, 1945, World War II ends, and the whole world breathes a sigh of relief, and all the factories that have been churning out bombs and guns and weapons are now free to manufacture positive things for human beings, and there is such prosperity as the war ends and the factories start churning out record players and radios and pianos and stoves and refrigerators and new cars and this new invention they call radio with a picture, television. It's a whole new thing, and the economy is going great guns, and it's a time of peace and prosperity, the late 1940s. So let's go back to the guitar and sing a song that came from that era that I think really symbolizes the peace and prosperity we have after World War II. It's a song that comes from a Walt Disney song, a Walt Disney movie in 1947. And it's a song that I sing often these days, especially the older I get, because when I wake up in the morning these days, I put my eyes upward and say, thank God I have another day of adventure, another day of life. And this is a song of gratitude about waking up and having another new morning. Okay, there we go. I think you'll know this song, so if you do, feel free to sing along. Zippity-doo-dah. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Hey! Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's the truth, it's actual. Everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine headed my way. Hey! Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's the truth, it's actual. Everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Zippity-doo-dah, Walt Disney. Well, then comes the 1950s, and as we look back on the 50s, you can see, compared to today, it was a time of relative innocence. It's an innocence that sometimes I miss, especially among children. These days, everybody's trying to, even 7-year-olds are trying to act like adults and grow up instantly. I think there was something to be said for our lives in the 1950s that children were a little more, they were more childlike, where they got to experience their childhood. And this innocence in the 1950s, there was one woman who I think really personified the innocence. Doris Day was her name. She was an actress, you'll remember, she had blonde hair, and she was in a lot of romantic comedies. They were light movies in the 1950s. They would pair her with, I don't know, Jack Lemmon or Rock Hudson or some romantic star. And what I always remember was she was so innocent and virtuous that, she would maybe be infatuated with one of these handsome men, and they were infatuated with her. But as you remember, it would be about the 6th date before she'd even kiss the guy. Now that was real innocence. Doris Day. And let's do a song that salutes her and kind of encapsulates the innocence back then. A song that she did which was very famous. Que sera, sera. Sing along. When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. Then I grew up and fell in love. I asked my sweetheart, what lies ahead? Will we have rainbows day after day? Here's what my sweetheart said. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. Now I have children of my own. They ask their father, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? I tell them tenderly, que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. Que sera, sera. The early 1950s, yes. There was something else, though, that was happening in the mid to late 1950s, and it ran a little counter to the innocence, because in a way it was a little bit of a rebellion. Some of the musicians took mountain music, country western music, some people called it hillbilly music. they took that kind of music and they mixed with it blues music from the urban neighborhoods of the country in the Mississippi Delta, kind of rough with a rough edge. And they mixed that in there, and then they added a pinch of Cajun music, a little bit of spiritual music, gospel music from the churches, and a little bit of jazz. And they mixed all these kind of styles of music up in one pot, and they came out with this whole new invention in music, rock and roll. Remember that? If you were an adult in the 1950s, you probably put your hands over your ears, and you said, this is a bunch of noise. But if you were a teenager in the 1950s, you might have said, oh, this is great music. I love it. Give me more. And remember, there was the guy they called the king of rock and roll. He was a truck driver from Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis Presley. And he became a star almost overnight. Remember, he was on that Sunday night show we all watched on television, the Ed Sullivan Show. Ed Sullivan with his coat and tie, very proper guy, but he introduces Elvis Presley, and Elvis comes out wiggling his hips like he always did, and snarling and singing his songs. Of course, remember, Ed told the cameramen, don't show Elvis from the waist down because it's too sexually suggestive. This is the 1950s. We're in modern times, he said, but that's just too much. But anyway, Elvis, he rose to fame. And let's do a little salute now to the early rock and roll that Elvis was involved with and some of the other stars. Don't worry, it won't be too loud. We won't have electric guitars here or drums or anything, and I won't be shouting. But just to give you a little salute here to the early rock and roll, we'll start with an Elvis song and move to a few others. Here we go. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, just crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, just crying all the time. You ain't never caught a rabbit, you ain't no friend of mine. Jerry Lee Lewis, whole lot of shaking going on. Whole lot of shaking, baby, you can't go wrong. You can't fake it, well, whole lot of shaking going on. Bill Haley in the Comets, when the clock strikes 2, 3, and 4, we'll all gather round and we'll yell for more. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock the broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Carl Perkins, a blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes. You can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoes. Chuck Berry, go, go Johnny, go, 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 go Johnny, go, 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 go Johnny, go, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go, go. Johnny, be good, Bobby Day. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, 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 rockin' robin, tweet, tweedly-dee, rockin' robin, tweet, tweedly-dee, oh, oh, rockin' robin, we're really gonna rock tonight. Little Richard, tutti frutti, all Rudy. 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 A bump, bam, ba doo, bump, de bump, bam, boom. Oh, that early rock and roll. That was something. Early rock and roll. Oh, my goodness. Well, there was something else happening, interestingly, that I wanted to do one song on. You remember Peter Pan? Peter Pan. It was a Broadway musical starring Mary Martin, and in the mid-50s, the late 50s, and they decided to broadcast a live one-night version of that Broadway musical, Peter Pan, and put it onto television. Television. Now, television was a new invention. When the 50s started, only about 5 or 10% of the people had a television. But by 1960, about 80, 90% of all of us had a television in our home. So they said, this is a good idea. Let's put this popular Broadway musical onto television. It'll really spotlight television. So let me move over here to the piano, and we'll do this song from the Peter Pan musical. And I love this song. It's a delightful song. Remember, Peter Pan, he had this group of young boys with him, and they lived in a place called Never Never Land, where supposedly no one ever grew old. They didn't even become adults. They got to be children their whole lives. Well, we know that's a lie. There's no place like that, especially us older people. We know that. But, you know, one thing we can do is live our lives with youthful spirit. And I think, to me, that's what the song is really all about. I have a place where dreams are born and time is never planned. It's not on any chart, you must find it with your heart. Never, never land. It might be miles beyond the moon, or right here where you stand. Just keep an open mind, and then suddenly you'll find never, never land. You'll have a treasure if you stay there, more precious far than gold. For once you have found your way there, you can never, never grow old. And that's my home where dreams are born and time is never planned. Just think of lovely things and your heart will fly on wings forever in never, never land. Never, never land. Well, the 1950s comes to an end with another development, folk music, a revival of folk music. Of course, folk music has been around for decades and centuries. Songs of just real people making up songs about their own lives, whether they be farmers or farm workers or soldiers or prison inmates or slaves, factory workers, you name it. Folk music, around for decades, but in the 1950s it has a revival. So let's do a song that kind of symbolizes this. And another thing about folk music is, of course, every country has their own folk music. And we here in America start hearing folk music songs from Britain and Ireland and Israel and Arab countries and China and Russia. And it really broadens our horizons in the 1950s. And another type of folk music that was from another country came here and broadened our horizons even more, calypso music. Remember, with the bongo drums and the Congo drums, and it was brought to us by a guy named Harry Belafonte. So let's do a song that was a big hit of his around 1958. And of course, this music came from down in the Caribbean islands, Jamaica and Trinidad, and all the islands down there, the Dominican Republic and Cuba, calypso music. So let's do a song that reflects that. and our broadened horizons because of it. Because we started thinking about other countries, not just our own, through folk music. Down the way where the nights are gay and the sun shines daily on the mountaintop, I took a trip on a sailing ship, and when I reached Jamaica, I made a stop. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston Town. Down at the market you can hear ladies cry out while on their heads they bear ackee rice, salt fish are nice, and the rum is fine any time of year. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston Town. Sounds of laughter everywhere, and the dancing girls swaying to and fro. I must declare my heart is there, though I've been from Maine to Mexico. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston Town. Cha-cha-cha! Calypso music, Harry Belafonte, the late 1950s. And as we moved into the early 60s, folk music really started mushrooming in popularity, and there were all these groups. You remember some of them, the Kingston Trio, the Limelighters, the Highwaymen, and there were solo singers, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Joni Mitchell. Oh, there were so many groups and duos. Ian and Sylvia, one of the duos. And then came a new group in 1962 that burst onto the scene. And like a lot of the other groups, they had beautiful harmony. They did very meaningful songs. But this group was a notch above. Peter, Paul, and Mary, that was their name. Remember? There were the two guys, Peter and Paul, with beards. That was a little unusual. And then in the middle, Mary, tall, with a beautiful voice and long, flowing blonde hair. Peter, Paul, and Mary. And one reason that Peter, Paul, and Mary were kind of a step above some of the other groups, their songs were so inspiring. A lot of their songs were about hope and peace and justice, and how if we all work together, we can make it a better country and a better world. So let's do their big song that kind of helped boost them in popularity right at the beginning of their career. Early 1960s, Peter, Paul, and Mary, If I Had a Hammer. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out a warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, sing it in the evening, all over this land. Paul and Mary. Folk music, the 1960s. Something else was happening in the early 1960s, the civil rights movement. Remember? Even those of us up north here, we were watching our black and white television sets. We watched the news, and we saw these images, very startling and shocking images of what was happening down in Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi. We saw black people walking around in circles, around courthouses, around restaurants, with picket signs basically just saying, "Freedom now. I want my freedom." Because there were state laws back then that said black people could not eat at the same restaurants as white people. If they went to a movie theater, they had to sit in the balcony. They couldn't ride together on buses with white people. They had to go to different bathrooms, public bathrooms. They had to drink from different drinking fountains, usually inferior ones. They were segregated in all black schools, which had less money than the white schools. And the black demonstrators marched around and sang and wrote letters to the editor of newspapers and called their congressman and said, "Please change the laws, please change the laws." And often the demonstrators, what we saw on TV, the shocking part was the demonstrators would go out and they'd get beaten by the police or the sheriffs, or they'd get hauled off to jail. Sometimes they were killed. But they went out and they faced the mobs, the violent mobs, day after day, even though the demonstrators didn't have weapons and the people who beat them did have weapons. But the protesters went out day after day. They were energized by prayer and by song. Songs like this one. Songs like this one that people still sing today. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Also, as the 1960s moved year to year, something else grabbed the headlines. We all remember it, the war in Vietnam. At first, we had just a few tens of thousands of troops in Vietnam, American troops, going over to help fight against communism, we were told. And most Americans supported the war. And then as the years went by, more and more American troops were sent, young men in the 19, 20-year-olds, and more people started turning against the war as the 60s wore on, as the number of people were killed, and it was a divided nation, just like today. Some people said we should keep fighting. Other people said, let's bring the troops home. Let's do a song that kind of symbolized that. And that was a song that Pete Seeger helped to write by taking an old Russian poem and putting it to music. Where have all the flowers gone? All have all the flowers gone long time ago? Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them every one. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Gone to young men, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone to soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Where have all the flowers gone? Well, in the late 1960s, there was a song that really seemed to capture people's imagination. A beautiful song, and it was made a big hit by a guy who really was not known for his singing. In fact, he had kind of a raspy, rough voice. Louis Armstrong, remember him? Great trumpeter, but not known for being a great singer. And yet, when he sang this beautiful song, a song of gratitude, it captured people's hearts. And people still sing it today when we want to express our gratitude for such a great land we have, a great world. In fact, it's called What a Wonderful World. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed days, dark sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. What a wonderful world. I see our time is almost up. So we've been through the 1930s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Let's go back to the 1940s for our very last song, written by a guy who was around in the 30s and the 40s. Woody Guthrie was his name. During the Depression years, he wrote dozens of songs about what hard times those were. And they were simple songs with simple melodies, but with lyrics that really captured people's hearts. And then in the 1940s, Woody Guthrie wrote dozens of other songs, and he wrote this next song and our final song today, kind of a love song to America. Although, let's be frank, Woody Guthrie had a lot of criticism that he leveled at his home country when he didn't think we were living up to her ideals. But this song also has a lot of positive elements. I remember learning it in elementary school. You might have too. It's been a real pleasure singing for you today and singing with you. I think I can hear some of you out there singing along to a lot of these songs because you do know these songs. A lot of these songs are important in your life history. Okay, this one final song by Woody Guthrie. I love the message here. The message is, whether you're black or white, rich or poor, male or female, whatever you are, there's a place in this country for you. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of Earth's diamond desert, and all around me a voice was singing. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters.